didn't find him. I stayed for hours asking anyone, law enforcement, neighbors. I even asked a homeowner if I could climb on her roof to see if I can see something. I learned again from a Facebook post that our dad had been shot. Not because I could see him, but because I could hear his voice on videos posted online crying for help. Hours after the video was posted, I finally had learned that my dad had been taken to Bentop Hospital, but with no signs of his condition. I waited there for hours until Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia stepped in and demanded answers. Finally, it was confirmed. My dad, Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, age 52, had died from his injuries.
Over the past 2 weeks, we've had to grieve our father too soon and without straight answers. DHS, first said ICE, targeted our father, then admitted he was never their intended target at all. DHS also said he weaponized his vehicle, a claim the 3 men who were in the van with him have directly disputed, and one that the surveillance footage made public so far does not appear to show. None of the agents involved were wearing body cameras, so we'll never have that perspective. Now they're saying there may have been drugs in the vehicle, which anyone who knew our father would tell you is absurd. He did not use drugs. He abhorred them.
And I know my father would have stopped his vehicle immediately if ICE agents had clearly identified themselves, rather than aggressively approach him in 2 unmarked vehicles without emergency lights on. That must have been terrifying, not knowing who was after him. We had talked about what would happen if he were to be stopped by ICE and how he would conduct himself. And he believed there would always be a way for him to come back home to us.
We are not the only family living this Kafkaesque nightmare. Shortly after our father was killed, a 3-year-old girl in Biddeford, Maine, watched federal agents shoot and kill her father, Joan Sebastian Duran Guerrero. He too was later confirmed not to be their target. Queremos que su familia sepa, compartimos su dolor. Nadie debería enterrar un padre o un ser querido de esta manera.
Our father deserves justice. Today, we are asking that you use your authority as members of Congress to help ensure that he gets it. I want to first highlight one of the members of Congress here today, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. When I was at Bentop Hospital pacing through the hallways waiting for an answer, the Congresswoman stepped up and marched into the lobby in her powerful pink suit jacket and demanded to speak with the higher-ups to finally get the confirmation that my dad had died. I do not want any of you elected officials to have to go through what the Congresswoman did that day. How many more of our dads have to die? How many more children have to wait hopelessly for answers? How many more wives will have to suffer the loss of their life partner? I urge all of you, esteemed members of Congress, and your colleagues to take action. And this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of right and wrong. And we believe that there are many wrongs in what happened on July 7th, the day our dad died. All elected members of government have a duty to ensure the safety and well-being of their constituents. Every single member of Congress have immigrants living in your states, in your districts, in your neighborhoods. What is being done to make sure that they can live without fear? To make sure that they won't be next? It is our hope that we're not asking for too much. All we're asking is the following. First, there must be a thorough, truly independent investigation, not one where the agency under investigation also controls the evidence and is able to unilaterally clear its own personnel of any wrongdoing. Congress should insist that federal, state, and local investigations all move forward with full federal cooperation and should demand answers on a public timeline.
Second, every piece of evidence must be preserved and shared, including recorded radio traffic, agency communications, and any video or audio footage that exists, even though no agent wore a body camera that morning. We have sent our own letters demanding the preservation of evidence, and we ask that you do the same.
Third, the 3 members of our dad's work crew who were in that van, Daniel Tirado Pantoja, Jose Trinidad Rojas Pliego, and our uncle Victor Hugo Salgado, are essential witnesses to what happened to our father. They must be able to tell their stories in full without fear of being deported. They should be released from detention immediately so they can be with their families, speak with investigators, and grieve with us. Removal of these individuals and a failure to assure them of their safety would amount to nothing less than a cover-up.
Finally, while we are grateful that you convened this hearing today, please don't let it be the only thing that you do for our father. Use all the tools that you have to request records, demand follow-up, hold other hearings, and enact laws, not only to help us learn the truth about what happened to our father, but to make sure this never happens again.
On behalf of our family, thank you for hearing us today and for the chance to make sure our father's name is remembered for who he was. Not as a headline, but as a husband, a father, a brother, a job creator, a man who believed good things come to those who work hard and who work tirelessly to give his sons more than he had. I have a message for all of y'all out in the streets, protesting and peacefully marching. Thank you. We have some requests for y'all. First, be loud in calling for justice for our dad, Lorenzo Salgado, justicia para Joan y justicia para todos. Second, stay hydrated. Third, and most importantly, make sure that you do everything in your power to get home to your families at the end of the day.
We thank you for meeting this moment with the integrity, the respect, the attention it deserves. And lastly, if you'll lend me 2 more minutes of your time, I want you to seriously try to put yourselves in my and Ronnie's shoes. I know it sounds impossible, but really, I ask everyone listening or watching to close your eyes and really try. I want you in your mind to think of a loved one, your brother, your father, your cousin, a beloved coworker. Picture their face and silently say their first and last name. Picture that loved one's face, pinned to the ground, in pain, and yelling out in desperate need of help. Picture the anger and helplessness of watching that person bleed out through a video on your phone. What would you do after? How would you cope with the feeling of losing your protector, your role model, your mother's loving partner, your grandmother's little boy? Would you also make the decision to speak in front of cameras, in front of the national media, to decry the unjust way your father was taken from you, like Ronnie and I have? Think. I really want you to seriously consider what you would do. You wouldn't cower and let bygones be bygones. You would surely move mountains, go hungry, without sleep, marching incessantly towards the slow beating drum of justice. That feeling you feel right now is only a fraction of what my family and I have felt these past 17 days. These past 17 days, my family has spent every waking moment, over 400 hours, asking questions about our father's untimely and unnecessarily violent killing. Going forward, we will spend thousands of hours more in order to fulfill the promise we made to our grandmother at our father's wake, that justice will be done. Would you do the same? We thank you for your efforts to make sure Lorenzo Salgado Araujo gets the justice he deserves. Thank you.
We thank you both for your testimony, and I can assure you that I can speak for the Committee of Homeland Security, our ranking member and the chair of the Hispanic Caucus, and all of us here, and the 180 who signed that letter, that we are with you, we hear you, and we too will not stop until justice is done. So you tell your abuelita that, okay? So next we have our witness, Sean Tier, who is our Harris County District Attorney. Sean was elected in 2024. Before taking office, he spent more than 11 years as a prosecutor in the Harris County District Attorney's Office, including 6 years as chief of the Vehicular Crimes Division. As DA, he has emphasized balancing public safety with fairness, supporting crime victims, and ensuring accountability within the criminal justice system. DA Tier is a fierce ally in the fight for justice, and we thank you for being here today, and you can begin your testimony. You have 5 minutes.
Chairman Espaillat, Ranking Member Thompson, Representative Garcia, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And thank you for bringing the vital oversight work of Congress right here to Houston. My name is Sean Tier. In 2024, I was elected by the people of Harris County to serve as district attorney. I'm the chief law enforcement officer for the third largest county in the United States, a county I'm proud to call home, defined by its diversity, resilience, grit, and courage in the face of any challenge. Today, our whole community is hurting. We're hurting because on July 7th, Lorenzo Salgado, by all accounts, a committed husband, father, and true Houstonian for more than 3 decades, was killed on his way to his construction job during an encounter with federal immigration officers. As someone who spent my career fighting for justice, I know there must be a transparent, independent investigation into what happened that day. That means we pursue the truth with courage, free of bias, free of prejudice, without the outcome already decided. We must look at every piece of evidence, talk to every witness, collect and examine every video. We must follow the evidence wherever it may lead. While I'm here today to answer questions, I will not be releasing details about the investigation to protect the integrity of our case. Make no mistake, I want to be as transparent with the public as possible, but my first and non-negotiable duty is to protect this case. On July 8th, I ordered the prosecutors and investigators in our Civil Rights Division to open an investigation into what happened to Lorenzo. Since then, for the last 14 plus days, this team has spent every single day in the East End collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. Understand that this parallel independent investigation by the Harris County DA's office is not unique. It's been the standard practice for decades. When a civilian is killed by an on-duty member of law enforcement, we investigate. In fact, law enforcement routinely invites the DA's office to the scene so we can immediately begin our own independent investigation. We owe it to the officers who put their lives on the line to protect our community. We owe it to the grieving families deserving of a thorough by-the-book review. When misuse of authority is uncovered, we will pursue that accountability through the law. What was unique on July 7th was that an invitation to the scene never occurred. I want to be clear, that was not okay. It can never be the case that a life is taken by a law enforcement officer and a proper independent investigation doesn't immediately begin. In most instances, our independent investigation determines that proper procedures and laws were followed. Confidence in the criminal justice system demands that this independent investigation occurs. However, as I'll mention later, the tactics being used by ICE are threatening public safety overall. Again, since this is now an ongoing investigation, I won't discuss what we know or what we don't know. I can't provide information about potential charges or potential targets, and I'm not going to speculate on a timeline for our investigation. Doing so is premature and would jeopardize the integrity of the entire investigation. But here's what I can say. First, this investigation is moving rapidly. We don't have all the pieces, but we are making significant progress. Thanks to the public, we've received information that's helping to shape this investigation, which is also partly why I'm here today. I continue to urge anyone, particularly witnesses and neighbors from the East End, to come forward if you haven't already. You can trust my team. Our only goal is to get to the truth. Second, local law enforcement partners are now working with us to share information to support our investigation. We've collaborated with the Houston office of the FBI, the Houston Police Department, Harris County Constable Precinct 6, and Houston Metro. And I especially appreciate the support of the Department of Public Safety, Texas Rangers, who are working alongside our team of prosecutors and investigators to ensure a thorough investigation. Before I close, I need to take a moment to share with you serious concerns I have about the immigration enforcement tactics we've seen deployed around the country and the effect they're having on law enforcement overall. Those of us in law enforcement don't take issue with deporting violent felons. However, here in Harris County, there are crimes and cases my office has not been able to prosecute because witnesses are scared of immigration consequences. They refuse to come forward or testify for fear of being deported. Unauthorized individuals are especially vulnerable. We know fewer domestic violence cases are being reported because victims are too afraid to cooperate with local law enforcement. Last year, a material witness in a pending murder case was literally on a plane to El Salvador when we were able to intervene. And this witness had a pending U visa at the time. And before you ask, I can't elaborate on that one either because it is still a pending case. Our job is to ensure crucial witnesses must remain here so that we can pursue justice. And in this investigation, witnesses must feel safe to come forward with information about the events of July 7th. They can't fear immigration consequences. What's happening isn't helping public safety. It's certainly not justice, and it's un-American. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today and your work to help us restore the trust between law enforcement and the communities we serve. And I know at the end I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'd like to now introduce Council Member Joaquin Martinez, who's a member of the City Council representing District I. District I is where this situation occurred with ICE officers. Councilmember Martinez has been at the forefront of advocating for transparency, accountability, and independent investigations into this untimely death. A lifelong East End resident and dedicated public servant, he spent over a decade strengthening the community around him. Mr. Martinez.
Honorable Chairman Espaillat, Ranking Member Thompson, Congressman Garcia, and members of Congress and distinguished guests, thank you for inviting me today to testify. My name is Joaquin Martinez, and I proudly serve on Houston City Council representing District I, where more than 75% of my constituents are Hispanic. But long before I was elected to public office, I was simply a kid growing up in Houston's East End. I'm a son of immigrants and one of 12 children. My father worked tirelessly to provide for our family, teaching us that there's dignity in hard work, personal responsibility, and keeping your word. My mother dedicated her life not only to raising 12 children, but ensuring that neighborhood kids, friends, and anyone who needed help, a helping hand, always felt welcome, supported, and cared for. Service wasn't something my parents talked about. It was simply a way of life. They taught us that success isn't measured only by what you achieve, but by how you serve others and strengthen your community. Those lessons shaped who I am. They are why I chose public service, and they are why this issue is deeply personal to me. Houston is one of the most diverse cities in America. Our immigrant communities are not separate from our success. They are essential to it. They power our economy, raise families, build businesses, and strengthen our neighborhoods every single day. That is why the death of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo has shaken our city so deeply. Lorenzo was not a political talking point. He was a husband, a father, a son, a neighbor, a working man who should have returned home to his family. Instead, his loved ones received the worst news imaginable. No matter where someone stands on immigration policy, every American should agree on this. When the government takes a life, it has an obligation to explain why. That obligation has not been met yet. Since his death, I have walked the neighborhood where this tragedy occurred alongside my team, connecting with residents with mental health resources, speaking directly with families. I heard from citizens, lawful permanent residents, mixed status families, and longtime Houstonians alike. Families where parents, children, siblings, or neighbors may have different immigration circumstances, but share the same homes, workplaces, schools, and communities. Parents questioned whether loved ones would return home from work. Children wondered whether their families were safe. Trust in government has been damaged, and that has consequences on every city in America. When people are afraid to report crimes, seek services, cooperate with public institutions, entire communities become less safe. This tragedy is bigger than one incident. It has exposed the human cost of a broken immigration system and reminded us that the consequences of federal policies are felt first in our cities and our neighborhoods. Across political spectrum, elected officials and community leaders have raised legitimate concerns about the use of unmarked vehicles, masked agents, and enforcement tactics that create fear and confusion in the communities that we serve. These concerns are not limited to one political party. They reflect a broader recognition that government operations must be carried out in a manner that is transparent, professional, and consistent with the values of a nation built on the rule of law. As a local leader, I will continue to use my voice to support the community and the family, provide resources, and advocate for accountability. But solutions required to address these challenges cannot be achieved solely at the city level. The work must happen here in Congress. It must happen in our state capitals, and it is time for elected leaders at every level of government to confront the realities that our immigration system is broken. We cannot fix a broken federal immigration system from City Hall. That responsibility belongs to Congress. This is not a Republican problem or a Democrat problem. It's an American problem that Congress, under administrations majorities from both parties, has failed to solve for decades. Congress must conduct meaningful oversight of this incident, demand transparency and accountability, examine enforcement practices, and finally deliver comprehensive immigration reform that protects public safety, respects the rule of law, safeguards our constitutional rights, and reflects the dignity of every person. No family should lose a loved one because of preventable failures. No community should be left without answers, and no city should be continue carrying the consequences of Washington's inability to act. The Salgado family deserves justice, the people of Houston deserve accountability, and the American people deserve an immigration system that is effective, transparent, humane, and worthy of the public's trust. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your testimony. I now recognize Mr. Juan Perono. Excuse me if I don't quite get it right. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the League of United Latin American Citizens, commonly called LUAC, the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. As CEO of LULAC, he leads the organization's national advocacy efforts on civil rights, education, economic opportunity, and immigration. And we are happy to have his voice before this committee, obviously for such a time as this.
Chairman Espaillat, Ranking Member Thompson, Representative Garcia, and distinguished members of the committee and of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, thank you for bringing Congress to Houston, to the community where Lorenzo Salgado Araujo lived, worked, and died. My name is Juan Proaño, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the League of United Latin American Citizens, the oldest and largest Latino civil rights organization in America, founded in 1929, right here in Texas. We're gathered here today to examine the fatal shooting of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and the all too common deaths caused by federal immigration enforcement officials. Before I begin, I want to take this opportunity to recognize Lorenzo's family. They have gone through heartbreak that no family should be forced to bear. Their courage and bravery in the wake of this tragedy has been inspiring, and though surely difficult, it has been vitally important. In that spirit, I commend Ronaldo and Lorenzo Jr.'s appearance before the committee today. And on behalf of LULAC, I want to express my deepest condolences and also tell them and everyone on this committee and in this country, Lorenzo's name and life will not be forgotten. He is and will remain an inspiration. Sadly, this killing is part of a broader trend. Federal immigration agents have repeatedly shot and killed United States citizens during civilian encounters, and dozens more. Citizens and immigrants alike have died in federal immigration custody. This calamity cannot continue, and with it, and it is with Congress's power to stop it from happening. Members of this committee, it could have been me. It could have been my father, my brother, my uncle. It could have been anyone gathered here today. In the 18 months since the second administration began, at least 8 people have been killed and dozens more shots in encounters with federal immigration agents. That includes Ruben Ray Martinez, a 23-year-old U.S. citizen from San Antonio who had just turned 23 and was planning to enroll in trade school to become a mechanic. Keith Porter Jr. was 43, a father of 2 daughters, and by all accounts, of family and neighbors, an outgoing, caring man. And of course, in January 2026, there was a shocking killings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. And the killings continue. 6 days after Lorenzo, on July 13th, 2026, an ICE officer shot and killed a 26-year-old Colombian man authorized to work in the United States, Joan Sebastian Duran Guerrero, in Biddeford, Maine. Again, during a vehicle stop with his 3-year-old daughter in that car. Again, described by DHS as a case of a driver weaponizing his car, and again involving agents who were not wearing body cameras. Taken together, these are not isolated tragedies attributed to a single rogue officer or a single bad night. Public reporting has documented at least 30 separate incidents since mid-2025 in which federal immigration agents fired at people, killing at least 8 and injuring at least 14, and at least 46 additional incidents in which agents held bystanders, protesters, and others at gunpoint under questionable circumstances. And these figures are likely undercounted, given the number of instances we have heard about. And the danger does not even end when someone survives an encounter on the street. It continues and by some measures intensifies once they're taken into ICE custody. In the first 500 days of the second Trump administration, there have been at least 52 documented deaths in ICE custody. The mortality rate inside ICE detention centers is now at its highest level in more than 2 decades. Nearly 4 times the rate under the prior administration, and more than 2.5 times the rate during this administration's first term. These increasingly dangerous conditions with record numbers of detention are increasingly hidden from public view. Last month, ICE ended a policy that required it to notify Congress and investigate the deaths of detainees who die within 30 days of release from custody. precisely the population most likely to have died from conditions that began while they were detained. And the shootings and detention deaths described above are the most acute expression of a wider set of policies from the Trump administration targeting Latinos. The overwhelming majority whom are lawfully in this country, creating a dangerous fear within our community. In a Pew poll last year, half of U.S. Latinos said that they were worried they or someone close to them might be deported, and a majority said that they were personally aware of a recent nearby ICE arrest or raid. So what can be done to end these cruel and inhumane policies and actions? LULAC offers 3 areas for this committee to take action: accountability, reform, and creating legal pathways to citizenship. First, Congress and DHS should support an independent investigation into Lorenzo Salgado Araujo's death, as the Houston mayor and police chief and Lorenzo's own family have called for, with independent law enforcement officials given access to every video, radio transmission, and piece of physical evidence, and the officers involved identified to investigators. ICE should also reinstate the policy it rescinded last month, requiring the agency to report to Congress about the investigation of deaths of detainees that occur within 30 days of their release. That must also be made available. And we need more accountability, not less, in the longer term. Congress should establish an independent use of force review board from the Department of Homeland Security, empowered to refer cases for prosecution so that no federal officer stands above the law that he enforces. Second, the time has come. Congress must reform ICE, the way that nation has reformed every institution that has lost the public's trust. The Secretary of Homeland Security can act by directive right now, prohibiting agents from firing weapons at moving vehicles. This tactic has led to numerous tragic deaths, and it is one that American civilian policing has largely abandoned. Requiring body-worn cameras on every officer in every operation, closing the gap left to investigators without footage in the Salgado, Araujo, Duran, Guerrero, and Porter shootings, and in ending the practice of masked, unidentifiable agents operating in American neighborhoods. But we have seen no indication that the Trump administration has any desire to take any meaningful action. Therefore, Congress should write binding use of force standards into statute, requiring rigorous training and full background checks for every agent, including the thousands hired amid this administration's rapid hiring surge, and eliminate arrest quotas that reward volume of arrests over judgment in the field. Finally, it is time for both parties to come together to legislate enduring legal pathways to citizenship. LULAC believes in the rule of law. We agree that America must have a secure and orderly border that responsibly and humanely manages unlawful entry. But a policy of enforcement alone has failed for 40 years under administrations of both parties. A man like Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, who had for 35 years worked, paid taxes, and created jobs in this state, in Texas, with a pending permit application, should have had a line to stand in. So Congress must build one. Earned legalization for long-term residents, dreamers, farm workers, and essential workers paired with a modernized legal immigration system that matches the American economy Latino workers and business owners already anchor. In fact, this has been done before with support from both parties. We call on this Congress to build a bipartisan framework, border security, ICE reform, and earned legal pathways in one durable package so that this issue is finally solved rather than perpetually exploited. Together, we must take on this vital and necessary work in honor of Lorenzo, Ruben, Keith, Renee, Alex, Johan, and the countless others who should be alive today. Each of these individuals built something, a business, a career, caring for veterans, a family, a future that contributed to their communities and to our country. We must act now so that no one else's life is put in danger because of the way they look and no other family has to mourn the needless death of a loved one. It is within our power to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next witness is Patricia Cabrera, Director of East End Communities, a collaborative dedicated to strengthening advanced housing stability, public safety, health equity, and civic engagement. Ms. Cabrera joins us today to share the community's perspective on the impact of this tragedy and the importance of trust, accountability, and public safety. Ms. Cabrera.
Good afternoon, members of the caucus and committee. My name is Patricia Cabrera. I've worked in Houston's East End for many years, but for the past 7 years, I've been centered in the beautiful and historic neighborhood of Magnolia Park. To understand the depth of the trauma our community experienced with the death of Mr. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, you must first understand Magnolia Park. Magnolia Park is home to nearly 15,000 residents. 89% are Hispanic, mostly of Mexican origin, and 44% are foreign-born. Local research tells us 1 in 4 residents is undocumented or lives in a mixed-status household. It's easy to understand, then, why newly arrived immigrants find safety, belonging, and opportunity in this barrio. Here you can buy groceries and order your pan dulce in Spanish, attend church, seek assistance through trusted community organizations, learn English if needed, and find enriching opportunities for your children. If you choose to work, English is not always required. There has always been work, and there will always be opportunity. Mr. Salgado Araujo's story felt painfully familiar to me. Just recently, I translated for a family working with volunteer attorneys who were preparing powers of attorney for parents at risk of deportation. Like Mr. Salgado Araujo, they had lived in this country for nearly 30 years. Their 6 children are U.S. citizens. They own a home, operate a small business, employ others, and have built their lives here. Their oldest son, only 24 years old, was given power of attorney to become head of the household in the event both parents were taken away. Then I heard of another family with a nearly identical story, but this father has already been detained by ICE. His company vehicles have been confiscated, and his family has already paid $45,000 to an attorney who is requesting another $50,000. These stories made me wonder, what was happening 30 years ago that brought these young men to the United States? I learned that Mexico is experiencing a devastating economic crisis as the peso lost much of its value. At the same time, the American economy was growing rapidly and desperately needed workers. They came seeking opportunity, and this country benefited from their labor. For 3 decades, these men and women helped build our homes, roads, businesses, and neighborhoods. More importantly, they invested in the future of this country by teaching their children the value of hard work, education, and service. Many were the parents of the dreamers, whose potential was ultimately recognized through bipartisan efforts that allowed them to pursue higher education and careers. Today, many of these children are professionals, business owners, public servants, and taxpayers contributing to the United States. These families are not criminals. They represent the very qualities any nation should value: resilience, sacrifice, commitment to family, and belief in a better future. They chose to build that future here. So I find myself asking, who would come to Magnolia Park to hunt for dangerous criminals? Even our local police department, who share monthly crime statistics with us, consistently tell us that crime in Magnolia Park continues to decline. And officers often point out that some more affluent neighborhoods experience higher crime rates than ours. In the past couple of years, I have attended many funerals in Magnolia Park. They always remind me of the extraordinary bonds that exist here. Multiple generations gather with neighbors, elected officials, civic leaders, and friends who return home to honor lives well lived. This is a community that celebrates together and grieves together. But this funeral was different. Its impact reached far beyond one neighborhood. People across Houston and across the country saw this loss as their own. We are not only mourning Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, a beloved father, a valued community member, and someone who is irreplaceable to his family. We are mourning something larger: the erosion of trust, dignity, and our shared humanity. Can people trust that those elected to serve them will value their lives? Must families live in fear of the very government meant to protect them? Our community feels anger, but before anger comes despair and helplessness. When we ask for answers and accountability, we are too often met with conjectural trade-offs. What is the price of a human life? And what is the cost of allowing more lives to remain at risk? Thank you for coming to Houston, to hear us, to see us, and to bear witness. We ask you to use your platform to demand meaningful oversight of DHS enforcement tactics and renewed attention to comprehensive immigration reform. Magnolia Park deserves answers. It deserves accountability. It deserves the right to live without fear. But today, we are all Magnolia Park.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Father Salvatore de George, a Catholic priest with the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, who has spent decades serving Houston's immigrant and working class communities. Throughout his ministry, including as pastor of St. Patrick Catholic Church, Father Salvatore has provided pastoral care and support to families navigating hardship and uncertainty. We appreciate his willingness to join us today to offer his perspective on the human impact of immigration enforcement and the importance of dignity, compassion, and justice. Thank you, Father.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the invitation, and thank you, Congressman, for not bringing up that I'm old. And also, when the question I was asked to poll the people about in our area, I'm in a parish that really encompasses the area where Lorenzo was shot and killed. So my task was to poll the people. I polled about 30 people once in a group of 9 and asked them what is different now that they have seen this violence. And this is mostly what I've culled from it. I have a text, but I'm going to stray a little bit, which is dangerous, but whatever. He also did not mention that I'm a second-generation immigrant Sicilian. I am immigrant stock and very proud of it. So some of this touches me personally. First of all, what has changed? Fear. ICE's moves were anecdotal to the people here, and they were also what they gathered from the papers and media, social media. But now they're no longer at a distance. They're here in the neighborhood, right in the neighborhood, Wayside and Macario Garcia, someone shot and killed without reason. So it's local now. So their fear is intensified. It's like a free-floating fear, fear of everything. Can I go to the store? Can I go to the hospital? Everything. Can I go to church? Can I go pick up the kids? Free-floating fear, which is a terrible situation, because then you're crippled in life when you walk with that. And not only the regular free-floating fear of being deported, fear of being killed, which is a terrible fear to walk with also. Lawlessness. Example, an American, Mexican-American person, citizen, sends her husband off to work. He's picked up on the job. He has a working permit, a social security number, and is in line to be a resident. Picked up, put in detention. She finds out where he is, Port Isabel. She gets an appointment to go see him. When she arrives, He is not there for the appointment. He's been dumped in Chiapas, Oaxaca, down in that area, far from his native place in Guerrero. Lawlessness is frightening. There's no protection. Violence breeds violence. The people who are organizing this, both the president and the head of Stephen Miller, both of them are fostering violence by racial remarks and actions. So when we see that, it wipes off on the people who enforce the law. So their actions are sponsoring violence, and now in our neighborhood, if someone comes with a car and brings you to the curb with no uniforms on and an unmarked car, and they come in with violent motives, we call that a carjacking. You carjack in anybody's neighborhood, and if a person in the car has a weapon, perhaps, that person will violently defend themselves. That sets off a whole domino effect of terrible, terrible consequences. And if you don't believe it in our neighborhoods, look at the Moody Park riot in 1978. That's what you provoke. And the fact of the matter is, our people are seeing that violence is being provoked, which is not one of the places where the government should be present. Point in question. The people in the parish, they feel like they're less than very often by what goes on. They've been told, if you do anything wrong, you will be hunted down. Let's talk about hunting an animal. Christy Noam in the airports until she was fired. So when we see that, we look at the aggression, fostering aggression, and it's a terrible situation. The legacy of the good man who was killed, his sons who spoke so valiantly and also spoke at the session with the union members, they must be full of terrible grief and rage at what happens. Well, what happens when we find ourselves in terrible grief and rage? We have to find a place to direct that. Your good Mexican-American children and grandchildren. You said your grandmother told you to do something. Isn't that right? Well, get it done. Your dad has left a legacy of a beautiful family and a legacy of homes built in Houston by him and his crew. That's a beautiful legacy. But there's another legacy that we, the groups I spoke with said, we want another legacy for them. And that legacy is the same legacy that was affected when Vanessa Guillen, by her family, who stuck with it, who turned the rage and the terrible, deep sense of loss and guilt, they turned that into what? They turned that into a dogged fight for justice. So much so that the people in the parish said, wouldn't it be great if one of these days we had the name of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, if we would have his name shining in the stars of heaven like the names of Vanessa Guillen, Sandra Bland, Rosa Parks, and others, that the legacy also be a profound legacy of justice that we can remember and that will make you so proud. The blood of your father would water that beautiful tree of justice, just like the blood of Christians watered the beautiful Christian of your faith. And lastly, the people of the parish, their faith. Surprisingly, their faith is still very strong. They believe in a loving and protective God that walks with them. They believe in the Blessed Mother, whom they have such a profound devotion to. The Blessed Mother who was hunted down, like they have witnessed being hunted down by Herod to protect her child. Now, their faith is very strong, but one of the little nuances on their faith that I've noticed is they've used evidently an anecdotal thing that our Islamic brothers and sisters quote all the time. They say, "See, yes, trust God, but tie up your camel." They're very, very careful to be careful not to get chosen for death or for deportation, but they still have a dogged devotion, and their faith is still in the gracious, loving God who walks with them and the compassionate Mother to whom they are so devoted. Lastly, at one of the rallies, as you work with this work of justice, recall the words that were cited at the last rally that we were at together, the two sons from Plato. Remember that we have to get involved. The price of apathy towards public affairs, says Plato, is to be ruled by evil men. 400 years before Christ. There you have it. Lastly, I'd really like to thank all of the persons here that are sponsoring this. Sometimes I think that perhaps you're working out a different mindset than I am. I think the world has been insane after 87 years, insane. The problem is we don't always realize that the patients have taken over. The patients have taken over. So if you think you're going to deal with that situation in a rational, moral way, they have no moral conscience. They are working out of a cultic, invincible ignorance, and that's difficult to work with. So thank you for your presence, and good luck with what you're trying to do. But if you get the wrong perspective on who you're working with, who knows what that's going to do. Pardon me, I've
Thank
gone
you,
over
Father.
time.
Thank you so much. I would appeal to my colleagues, the nearly impossible task of trying to get back on time. And I guess it starts with me. My questions go to the district attorney of Harris County. I know that you have stated that there is an ongoing investigation, and as such, you're not privy to share with us certain information, but your office does review every death that occurs during an interaction with law enforcement in Harris County. In nearly many of these cases, you begin with film footage that may be available through either body cameras, surveillance cameras, or bystanders who record these interactions, which is captured under written activation policies held to retention schedules which establish rules about when your prosecutors get access to it. In this case, you have none of that. The ICE officers were not equipped with the body cameras. The video does not exist. Surveillance footage and bystander recordings sit in federal custody, if there's any. So how does rebuilding this case differ, particularly and procedurally, from every other officer involved that your office has handled? And what steps will you take to complete this to complete this and still move this case forward? What are the challenges given that reality?
Well, Chairman, thank you. I will do my best to keep us on time as well. But we are, quite frankly, the experts in the state at collecting evidence, specifically surveillance and things like that. We have over 100 sworn police officers that work as investigators directly from my office. As I said in my testimony, from the morning after this shooting, we've been on the ground in the East End, in that intersection, down that street, and very far from that, trying to piece together exactly what happened that entire morning. So we have collected countless pieces of surveillance. We have talked to countless witnesses, and since the day after, we opened our own secure portal and pushed it out to the public as a whole. And it's one of the many, many reasons I love Houston and Harris County. The community has rallied around us. We've gotten so many tips, pieces of cell phone footage, all the other types of things that we would have normally been able to get that day. We've been able to recreate a significant portion of that as well. It's not the same. And one thing that I will point to is a 2018 federal shooting fatality here in Harris County that was handled completely different than this one. It was an FBI agent who mistakenly shot a victim during a kidnapping recovery. The DA's office was on the scene. The DA's office from the very beginning was inside the rooms talking about evidence the way we do in all other shooting investigations. And we came to the end of that together with our law enforcement partners. This didn't happen that way at all. And it makes no sense. As we sit here today, Lorenzo's brother is having a hearing in detention about whether or not he gets to stay. He is, by all accounts, the most material witness in this shooting. And the fact that we're even going through the process to suggest he might not be here is it's unheard of. And they should not, those three men have committed no state crimes at all. They should not be in custody so that we don't have unfettered access to them, to be able to interview them, to be able to get exactly what happened while they sleep in their own beds, while they're with their families, and while they're not being treated the way they're being treated in Conroe. I apologize for the long answer, but I thought it was worth it.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I yield to the ranking member, Bennie Thompson.
Thank you very much. Mr. DA, taking off from Mr. Espaillat's question, can you walk us through in concrete terms what your office has requested from DHS in the course of your investigation, and what has been provided and what has been withheld?
So if we're going to go specifically to DHS, my office has reached out to DHS on a number of occasions after this shooting. And not only have we not been told no, we haven't gotten anything back. We haven't gotten a response to anything.
So you've not gotten anything back?
No, sir.
Is this normal for an agency to act this way?
It's unique in its abnormality. There has, in every agency in the 20 years that I've been in law enforcement, I've never seen behavior like this. The FBI, that had a very, very small scope in this investigation, had us to the FBI field office within days and let us know what they had. We weren't given immediate access, but they at least.
And they have not.
We haven't heard anything from them.
All right. Lastly, bear with myself. So, with that being the case, to what extent can you provide an independent local investigation when the federal government controls access to the scene, the vehicle, the body, and the eyewitnesses?
We're very good at what we do. at the DA's office here, with the help of the Texas Rangers and our local law enforcement, I feel very confident in our ability to conduct the investigation that we do in all of these cases to an extent. But we're going to need the help of bodies like this one to compel DHS to give us the evidence that they would give, that all other agencies would give us. So we're going to be able to be as transparent and get justice, but we're going to need help to do it.
I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And now we will hear from Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. DA, for being here today. I know you and I have visited about this case some, and I just wanted to ask you just point blank, as you continue to do your own investigation, you've responded to Chairman Thompson that you've gotten nothing. Have we even identified the shooter?
Congresswoman, I would love to sit here for as long as you guys have questions and answer specifics, but I can tell you definitively that DHS, OIG, and ICE have not divulged the shooter's identity to us. Okay.
Do we know, is the shooter and the others involved in the incident, are they on administrative leave, or they're in suspension, or are they still working somewhere else?
I can tell you that DHS, OIG, and ICE have not informed us of even whether or not they're still on the streets. So they haven't told us anything. We have been able to identify some pieces of evidence without the official notifications, but they haven't told us anything about that.
So they secured the incidents, hear the evidence, they secured the vehicle, and you've been given nothing.
Through DHS OIG, that's correct. We've been given nothing.
Okay. So you and I are both lawyers. Is it common practice to make public an affidavit, the basis for a search warrant?
In the federal system, because I've been a state prosecutor most of my career, but we do have to work hand in hand with federal prosecutors and federal agencies all the time. This is the first time in my career that I've ever seen a search warrant in a criminal case on a federal side unsealed, at least prior to a grand jury presentation of the facts. To unseal it the day it's signed, I've never seen it in my life, 20 years.
Well, that's been my experience. So could you even speculate as to why it was unsealed? And why, more importantly, if there was going to be a search done, why did they wait till 8 days later?
The timing of the search was not as kind of different for me, having seen a lot of them, because we knew that the van was secure. So there wasn't a time need. The need for a search warrant at all was interesting. There was no one alive that would have had standing to object to a search. The stated goals of the search warrant had nothing to do with this shooting investigation at all. The van was not being alleged to have been stopped based on possession of narcotics. There was no indication that anyone in law enforcement was aware that narcotics potentially were in the car. And what the search warrant didn't contain, it didn't contain language that would have allowed the FBI or anyone to obtain the crash data recorder or the airbag control module, which would have been telling in whether or not the van was weaponized, as it was said. So, yeah, the entire thing really was not something that I would have advised my prosecutors or my law enforcement partners to have done.
Well, it's unusual, especially since they described it that it was in plain view, which of course we know is a term of art. But I just want to be clear. You said alleged drugs, and I want to make sure the public is crystal clear
Right.
that it's alleged.
And Congresswoman, I feel very confident that in short order, we're going to get the laboratory results back. And I think it'll be confirmed what the family has said numerous times, because everything that we've discovered about the 4 men in that vehicle, it would be extraordinarily out of character for those to be illicit narcotics of any kind.
Right. And the family has conflicted that and said that it's something that they use to hydrate.
Yeah, when you're working outside in July in Texas, that's needed.
Correct. Well, thank you again for all your work that you're doing. And Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Martinez, if you will indulge me. Just one quick question. Council member, you've been a lifelong resident of the East End. Following this tragic loss, how has it changed the neighborhood? Can you share just maybe one or two little anecdotes in the interest of time, just one or two?
Yes.
To just so that Congress members here can feel what it does to the heart of a community.
Yes, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. Ultimately, it creates fear and distrust. Distrust in creating safe spaces where folks have lived there for generations. It's not making it easy for local law enforcement to provide the safety that we're tasked to do for our residents and citizens of Houston.
Thank you. I yield to my colleague from Houston, Congressman Green, and also a member of the Homeland Security Committee.
Thank you very much, and I thank the ranking member Thompson for being here today, and Congressman Espaillat. I am privileged to present a document that has been presented to me from the Honorable Johnny Mata, the President and CEO of the Greater Houston Coalition of Justice. It concerns questions that he has that we will insert into the record at an appropriate time. I am deeply saddened by what has happened, and I know why it happened. Mr. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo was a good man, a good family man, a good family Latino man in a white van. He was profiled, and as he was profiled, he was being hunted. Father, you're eminently correct. He was being hunted. He was the prey of the day. He was a part of a quota that had to be met. And as a part of the quota that had to be met, he finds himself in a position such that he is being chased through a Latino neighborhood. Unfortunately, this ended with an extrajudicial execution. He was not given a fair trial. There was no due process. It was an extrajudicial execution. It is a part of a bigger picture that we have failed to embrace properly. The President of the United States of America is engaged in ethnic cleansing. Latinos, wherever you are in the country now, you are considered not just undocumented, but unlawful. You are suspect. But it doesn't end with Latinos as illegals, as they're being called, and I hate that term. I regret it. I don't like using the word hate, but they're not illegals. But it doesn't end with them. It also applies to the Haitians. Haitians have been deported back to a country where gangs are in control. This is a part of the ethnic cleansing taking place in this country. And unfortunately, there is a cover-up. There's a cover-up. There is no reason for us to have waited as long as we have not to know what happened to Pretty or what happened to Good. Those cases should have been presented such that the public will have some sense of what happened. We saw it. We have the empirical evidence. I stand with this family. I stand against the cover-up. I stand against the ethnic cleansing. And I assure you that as a member of Congress who believes that the Constitution ought to be followed, I will bring impeachment. The time has come for the record to be made. We cannot allow this kind of behavior to go unchecked. And I want you to know, Mr. Johnny Mata, that what you have done to help with this cause is not going to go unnoticed. I see Ms. Morales here, Christina Morales, the representative. It will not go unnoticed. I saw Jean Wu, representative. It will not go unnoticed. And of course, the former Congresswoman is here, the daughter of Sheila Jackson Lee. It will not go unnoticed. And I close with these words. We have reached a point in our history where we either fight or we will find ourselves retreating to a time when we couldn't fight. We have free speech. We've got to use it. I'm going to use my free speech. My question, Mr. District Attorney, is this. Body cameras are great. I support it. Brought it up in a hearing just recently with Chairman Thompson. I always call him Chairman. They're great. But I also think we need dash cams. Cameras on the dashboard of those vehicles that are chasing people through our communities. I ask you if you concur.
Absolutely.
And have you found them to be beneficial in your line of work?
There's no question. And if you have unmarked cars, they should be equipped with them. But we should also have a policy that has marked units if they're going to affect a traffic stop.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we will hear from Representative Lizzie Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Chairman Espaillat, and thanks to you and Ranking Member Thompson and Representative Garcia for convening this important oversight forum. And I want to thank all of my colleagues who've come from across the country to see and hear from our community. And I want to thank our witnesses from our community for so beautifully explaining and showing this community to the rest of the country. Because people across our community and across the country, as Father DeGeorge and Ms. Cabrera explained so beautifully, have been living in fear, and their worst fears were realized again when federal agents killed Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. So I want to thank all of you for testifying and for your leadership in our community, especially at this devastating time. Ronaldo and Lorenzo, my thoughts have been and will continue to be with you and your mother and your entire family, not just today, but in all the days ahead. You make us proud, and you make us all proud for your advocacy and for your commitment to justice for all. And I hope today's hearing will demonstrate to you and to everyone here our commitment of not only our Houston Congressional Democratic delegation, but the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the entire House Democratic Caucus. It is a failure of this Congress and many before that we have not been able to pass laws to address our broken immigration system. The people here have been trying and will continue to do so. But it is a new and utter failure of this Republican-controlled Congress that has not only failed to address, it has refused to address the abuses that this White House is directing in terms of immigration enforcement operations, and that it has done nothing, when innocent people in this country have been killed at the hands of federal immigration agents this year and during this term. It is a betrayal of families and communities across the country that we represent. It is a betrayal of the Constitution that we have all sworn an oath to protect and defend. And it is a betrayal of our values as Americans. And yet what we hear from those who are directing these policies is that these actions are being taken to make us safe. And so, District Attorney Tier, I want to direct my questions, start my questions with you. Can you tell us from your experience of 20 years in law enforcement, whether the policies that we have seen implemented at ICE and in terms of immigration enforcement throughout DHS in the last 18 months have made our communities safer?
Objectively, no. They've had the complete opposite effect.
And can you tell us why that is? Can you give us some examples of what is making us less safe because of the policies that this administration is implementing?
We have people who are here unauthorized who are victims of domestic violence, aggravated robbery, aggravated sexual assault, who are too scared to even call the police, let alone participate in prosecutions of people who are here with documentation or who are citizens. These policies have effectively created a group of our community that are targets. And that's what we're seeing. And we can't hold the people that prey on them accountable. And that group of people knows it.
Thank you. In addition, Mr. Green asked about dash cams, and I also want to ask about the increased presence of unmarked vehicles and plainclothes officers for immigration enforcement activities. That's something I know many of us up here have objected to repeatedly. But can you talk about what that does in our communities as well?
Yeah, it continues the feeling of fear, the floating fear that Father talked about. But it's just not good law enforcement policy. Undercover work is crucial to good law enforcement policy, but undercover officers don't then affect the traffic stops for reasons that we have seen time and again around the fear of the person trying to be stopped. So it is not best practices.
Thank you. And with the time I have left, Councilmember Martinez, I just want to direct this question to you. Can you share with us how you see in the community this affects interactions with law enforcement agencies that come under your jurisdiction, like the Houston Police Department and others, and in the community because of the actions of these federal officers?
Yes, Congresswoman. So it's important to continue to highlight that calls for services are down. My team, we've done some research. We've gotten data from HPD within our zip codes, and they have gone down. And then even heavier in the southwest part of Houston, where we have an even more diverse immigrant population, calls for services have gone down even more so. What we're finding as well is that when residents, and I've shared my personal number with several community folks, when something is happening, an operation is happening, and folks can't identify who is heading that operation, we're having to call and figure out what agency is this, and in order to try and tamper down those fears.
Thank you, Councilmember. I've gone over my time. I appreciate it. Thank you all for your testimony and for your work, and thank you again for convening this hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And before we hear from the next Congress member, let's welcome Mayor John Whitmire. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mayor. And our next representative from San Antonio region, Congressman Joaquin Castro.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to also express my condolences to the Salgado family, to all three brothers, and to your mom and to your extended family, and say thank you to Congresswoman Garcia and to the Houston delegation and the entire city of Houston that has shown incredible courage and stood up to this injustice, to the members of the legislature and the city council, and to the mayor who have pushed and advocated in their own ways. Thank you so much. The more evidence that comes out, the clearer it becomes that Lorenzo Salgado Araujo was murdered in cold blood by agents of the United States government. ICE has not produced a shred of evidence to support its claim that Lorenzo was a danger to them. No body camera footage, no dash cam footage, no ring camera footage from homes or businesses nearby. When law enforcement has the evidence and facts on their side, they put them out immediately. ICE has not done any of that. Instead, ICE has chosen to smear a good man, a hardworking man, a family man, they have treated him with the same indignity in death as they did in life. They said that he was not their target. That's because everyone is their target. Everyone who is brown, who is speaking Spanish in public, Latino men who are driving in construction trucks, going to and from work, putting in a hard day's work. Donald Trump's campaign of mass deportation is an assault on the Hispanic community in the United States of America. And let us also remember that Texas Governor Greg Abbott is a full partner in that brutality. We see it on the streets and behind the prison walls of places like Dilley and Pearsall and Carnes in those detention centers. Governor Abbott has forced state and local law enforcement to assist ICE despite its reckless brutality. No identification, no warrants, full masks, and guns drawn. He is also the first governor to allow the Texas National Guard to be deployed into ICE detention centers like Dilley, where children as young as 2 months old are imprisoned in a trailer prison. This system and the people within it who have broken the law must be held accountable and brought to justice. Thank you to everyone who is committed to that. I want to ask a question of the district attorney. District Attorney Tier, thank you so much for initiating an investigation and pursuing justice. You mentioned that the Texas Rangers are assisting in that investigation. I first want to ask, just because there have been conflicting reports over the last 17 days, to the best of your knowledge, are the Texas Rangers conducting their own independent investigation?
Thank you. The way that the Rangers got involved in this case is different than normal. The Texas Rangers are the partner agency that we typically work with, being the DA's office, in officer-involved shootings all the time. Usually it is us the first day with them working our own parallel investigation collaboratively. This time it took the efforts of Senator Alvarado, Mayor Whitmire, Noe Diaz, to really get the Rangers to be able to be involved. And so it was 8 days later that they finally got in.
I know the governor didn't say anything about this case for a full week
Right.
after Lorenzo's death.
And so,
and can you speak? I know that you don't want to divulge too many details about the investigation in order not to compromise it. Can you speak to what kind of assistance the Rangers are providing?
they are doing what they always do, which is a fabulous investigation, albeit 8 days later. But we're in conversations with them hourly, and so we're working together to really kind of piece it back. But they're a real asset to us.
Thank you, District Attorney.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Now yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Castro. Now we're going to hear from Congressmember Christian Menefee.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for bringing the committee to Houston. ICE has proven itself to be a radicalized law enforcement agency. They've terrorized our communities. They've executed people in the streets. And in my opinion, this is an agency that needs to be torn down to the studs and rebuilt into one that enforces immigration law while recognizing the dignity of the people that it encounters. But we all know that that will not happen under this administration, and it won't happen under this Congress that's currently controlled by Republicans. So today I want to focus on something more simple: how badly ICE is failing to meet basic 2026 expectations of any law enforcement agency that carries a gun, that can use lethal force, that works the street, and that regularly confronts the public. So DA Tier, throughout your career, you've worked on thousands of cases involving local police forces, correct?
Yes.
So I served briefly on Houston's Independent Police Oversight Board, where we had civilian oversight over the police force. And anytime we had a case, the very first thing we did was review the body-worn camera footage. In fact, we reviewed that before we even read any of the witness statements that involved other officers. So, DA Tier, it's standard practice in 2026 for law enforcement officers on the street to wear body cameras, correct?
Congressman, you and I have been in this very room talking about things like this. We have 86 law enforcement agencies that operate in Harris County alone. The only one that doesn't have body cameras is ICE.
It's been publicly reported that the officers involved in this shooting did not have body cameras on. And what makes this particularly troubling is that DHS had the money. They got an influx of $75 billion from legislation passed last year, and they got $20 million specifically for body-worn cameras. They could have spent that on body cams for the officers that killed Mr. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, but they failed to do so. And in fact, we've seen that they have money to recruit folks, they have money for new vehicles, they have money to increase enforcement operations, but not for body-worn cameras. DA Tier, it's basic police practice in 2026 not to shoot into a vehicle unless the officer has no other way to protect themselves, correct?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
It's been reported that more than a dozen attorneys and former law enforcement officials reviewed the footage of the chase. They said officers are trained to step out of the path of a vehicle rather than shoot at it because a wounded driver is often more dangerous than one who is simply fleeing. But based on the reporting that I've seen, the officer in this case shot Mr. Salgado Araujo while he was still in the vehicle, and Mr. Salgado Araujo had not brandished a gun or any other weapon. When you take someone's life in this country, when government takes someone's life, it should only be because there was no other way for that officer to protect himself. But none of the evidence that we've seen supports that here. DA Tier, it is standard practice in 2026 that when an officer takes a human life, the department gets its facts straight and conducts at least some preliminary investigation before assigning blame in the media, correct?
At every level of law enforcement, that's correct.
But in this case, an ICE spokesperson told the press the very day of the shooting that Mr. Salgado Araujo rammed an ICE law enforcement vehicle and weaponized his vehicle in an attempt to run over an ICE law enforcement officer, resulting in the officer firing first in self-defense. That statement went out before any real investigation took place, and witnesses and evidence have since disputed it. So here what we see in closing is ICE does not follow basic police practice for 2026. No cameras when it had money for cameras. Shots fired into a vehicle when there's no evidence that we've seen that the officer was forced to do so to save his own life. A public statement blaming the victim before any real investigation took place. There needs to be an investigation of ICE, and it needs to be done by Congress, and it needs to be bipartisan. I have yet to see members of Congress for the Republican Party from the state of Texas speak out on this murder that took place. All we've seen is obfuscation from ICE, from the Department of Homeland Security, and from the Trump administration as well. In January, new leadership will happen in the halls of Congress. And I know that every single person sitting up on this dais right now will be in full-throated support of an investigation. So in closing, I want to say to Ronaldo, to Lorenzo Jr., thank you for your courage, and we will make sure justice happens when we take back the halls of Congress. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman. We will now hear from the Congresswoman from the state of California, Nanette Barragan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by offering my condolences to Ron and Lorenzo Salgado for the loss of your father. You have very powerful statements, and your ask of the Congress and members is going to be taken to Washington to make sure everybody hears those, not just those that are here today. You have my commitment that I'm going to do all I can to hold this administration, ICE officials, any law enforcement accountable, especially to bring justice to your family and your father in what was a killing, a murder that needs to be fully investigated. And so I continue to call on all those in law enforcement to do what they can to bring justice here and get all the facts. DA Terra, I want to go to you. It's reported that you now have access to the van and to surveillance footage. Are you satisfied that the evidence was preserved from the moment federal authorities took custody, including complete chain of custody records?
To the extent that we have evidence, I am satisfied. We still have a significant amount of physical evidence that we have not been able to get possession of. So that's to be determined, including in up to the weapon that was used. And the other biggest concern for me around evidence that is in possession of only DHS, OIG, and ICE are the documentations around and the reports around what happened and why those agents were on that street that morning. Apparently, the U.S. Attorney is privy to information that we're not, based on the statement that was released a few days ago. And because of that, I think this body and certainly my office needs to have the FOW, the Field Operational Worksheet that ICE utilizes for the interaction previously where they said that 2 Guatemalans were trying to be detained. ICE would have created an FOW for that. They would have supplemented that FOW after the initial interaction with the 2 Guatemalans, which I want to be real clear here, would have had the license plate of the white van that they were actually looking for. Because if you're just going to try to knock down a white van in the east end of Harris County, Houston, you're going to be busy. So they had the license plate number, which completely cuts against the stated reason for the stop. So we need the FOW, we need the original, we need the updated one, then we need the I-213, which is their offense report when they make an arrest and detention, which occurred this day. So we need to see every iteration of that as well. And these are standard things that we get from every law enforcement agency that we're investigating.
Thank you, DA. I want to just encourage you and implore you to continue to fight to get every piece of information. This is an out-of-control agency. This is an out-of-control administration. And this agency has no credibility. How do we know that? I'm reminded of the case in Chicago with Miramar Martinez, where ICE agents shot her 5 times. 5 times, and she survived. And what did they say then? Very similar things. Oh, it was the person in the car who rammed us. But all of a sudden, there was video footage, audio footage, text messages that showed it was actually the agents. As a matter of fact, the officers were bragging. One said, I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. These are the agents. The response was, you're a legend. Another officer responded, say, beer's on me when I see you at training. And even their leadership, when asked if they supported this, said, big time. This is the agency we're talking about. This is not the agency that has the hiring standards that the Texas Rangers has or local law enforcement has. And this is where we owe an apology to the Salgado family, that this government has failed you, that this agency has failed you, that this administration is out of control, and there we're going to continue to fight for justice, and we have to fight to take away the funding for ICE to start. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We will now hear from Congresswoman from the state of Oregon, Congresswoman Andrea Salinas.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Thompson and Chair Espaillat, for convening this, and thank you to all the witnesses, but in particular, thank you to the Salgado family. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. You've been incredibly brave. My dad grew up in Texas. He was an immigrant, and I saw him in your story. And this has been all of this entire out of control ICE, CBP, administration, agencies has been a very difficult time. But I am here 2,200 miles away from my hometown to let you know that I care, and I'm going to fight like hell until we get justice. This is not okay. Mr. Proaño, I want to start with you. You mentioned in your statement a mortality rate that is increasing. It's at its highest rates in detention centers. It's at an all-time high is what you said. That means people held in ICE detention are dying. And the district attorney, Tier, you mentioned that 4 witnesses from the work crew are all in ICE detention. So I don't know who wants to answer this. I have 2 questions. Do those witnesses have access to attorneys of their own in the event of abuse or an untimely death of those witnesses in ICE detention? And number 2, I think that is to you, Mr. Proaño. And number 2, my second question, can you explain why this is so problematic to the well-being of the witnesses and to the success to achieve justice?
Representative Salinas, in most cases they do not. When they're put into detention, sometimes they're moved from location to location, making it difficult for the families to actually even get into contact with them. In some cases, especially in Texas, they're very quick to move them from Texas to Louisiana, for example, putting them further and further away from legal counsel representation and even their own family members who would be there to support them too. And very sadly, the cost to actually have legal representation, given that the entire system is overwhelmed, immigration legal service organizations are literally stretched to full capacity. And the legal community that's there that can provide service, sometimes it is getting exceptionally expensive. It used to be $2,500 to $5,000. Now they're asking for $15,000, $18,000, $25,000 or more for representation in cases where they don't even have all the facts. So very sadly, our biggest challenge is getting lawyers for these detainees when they need them most.
And now, DA Tier, why is this so important to the case?
These are the 3 unbiased eyewitnesses that we have, period. When you think about the conditions that anyone that's incarcerated is under, but people that are incarcerated in that detention center specifically, they're on a different sleep schedule. They don't get the same level of sleep. They're displaced from their families. They are not able to memorialize what they saw and what they experienced in the same way that they would be in a sterile interview room. They are under a different set of stressors because they don't know if they're going to wake up tomorrow in this country. So all of these things go into the veracity of the statements that they're able to give to us, the ability to speak freely, which is one of the biggest concerns that we have. These aren't lawyer rooms that you think of even in the Harris County Jail that don't have recording devices. We have no idea who's listening when they're giving these statements. So the fact that they're still in there is extremely concerning in our ability to really interview them and get what we need.
Thank you again. I'll be respectful of time and yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We will now hear from the Congress member from the state of New Jersey, Rob Menendez.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today, especially Mr. Salgado Araujo's family. I can't begin to imagine how incredibly painful today's discussion must be for you. And I want you to know how grateful we are that despite that pain, you are still choosing to share the truth with the American people, a truth that we will carry with us forward back to DC and back to all of our districts. We're here today because a family lost a husband, a father, and it was entirely preventable. And we're here today to address the actions the Trump administration has taken that have made tragedies like this more common in our country. By design, our immigration enforcement has become so aggressive, so inhumane, and so insulated from accountability that families across the country, from Newark to Minnesota to Houston to Maine, are losing their loved ones in senseless acts of violence. A year ago, outside Delaney Hall in Newark, I said that no one is safe in Trump's America. Not fathers, not mothers, no one. Today is a painful reminder of that. And from day one of this administration, they have repeatedly lied to the American people about their actions. Mr. Perano, when someone is killed by federal law enforcement personnel, including ICE agents, should the American people be able to trust the government's account of that incident? Just yes or no?
Yes.
And why is that so important?
It's so important because it's the transparency piece of it. We don't really know who these folks are. They're masked agents, for example, with no identification, no credentialing at all whatsoever, riding around in vehicles that are unmarked at the end of the day.
But that's not what happened here in terms of being able to trust the government's account. Before any evidence was made public, before Lorenzo, Ronaldo, and their family had even been notified, let alone received answers, the Trump administration was already rushing to justify the killing with contradictory narratives that vilified the victim, their father. DHS initially claimed that Mr. Salgado Araujo was the subject of a targeted immigration enforcement operation before later acknowledging that he was not the intended target after all. District Attorney Tier, just yes or no, does the fact that DHS immediately provided a rushed and inaccurate account of what happened call into question the administration's credibility?
Yes.
I agree. And time again, we've seen the Trump administration bend the truth to justify fatal incidences and other acts of violence. After agents killed Renee Good in Minnesota, DHS claims she, quote, weaponized her vehicle as an act of domestic terrorism, despite clear video evidence that showed otherwise. District Attorney Tier, from your perspective, are these instances of misinformation isolated?
I can speak to this one, and it is extraordinarily concerning the number of different versions that came out prior to anything. And as someone that is an American, I've seen the same thing happen in Maine. I've seen the same thing happen in Illinois, and I've seen the same thing happen in Minnesota, among others. So I would say from just a layman's perspective, no, they're not isolated.
Thank you. When there's a broader pattern of the federal government using misinformation to avoid accountability and shield federal agents from scrutiny, it's not just the truth that suffers. Mr. Perano, if federal agencies know that the president and his administration will lie to cover up their misconduct, does that create a culture of impunity around the use of force?
It has emboldened this agency. It has emboldened these officers. They think that they can get away with it at the end of the day. And that really is a travesty of justice, and really goes against every fiber of really what any of us know to be an honest and just system.
Would it be fair to say that under these circumstances, violence against immigrants is not accidental, but systematically encouraged?
They are attacking and hunting Latinos and Latino communities.
And throughout the country?
Throughout the country.
In Minnesota, in Chicago, in New Orleans, in Charlotte, in Newark, in LA, across the country. That's why we need everyone across the country to speak up against what's happening, to lift their voices, to carry the names of those that have been taken from us with them. For the past year and a half, we've seen the Trump administration embrace a violent enforcement-first approach to immigration, one that maximizes arrests, deportations, and operations in community spaces, all while minimizing accountabilities. And families in my district in New Jersey, here in Houston, across the country have suffered immensely as a result. We owe it to Mr. Salgado Araujo and his family, as well as every family that has been or will be impacted by immigration enforcement actions, to hold the Trump administration accountable and to fight for a more humane immigration system. This does not end today. It will not end today. And it will not end until there's accountability, justice, and until we end this national nightmare. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, Congressman Menendez. And to finalize the question period of this hearing, we will hear from Representative James Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Chairman Espaillat, Ranking Member Thompson, and especially Congresswoman Garcia. Your leadership in this moment has been amazing. How many more of our dads have to die? Lorenzo and Ronaldo asked us that question. How many more of our mothers have to die? I appreciate all of the witnesses today. You all have provided valuable insights and information. But I came across the country to see Ronaldo and Lorenzo, to look into your eyes and to see your pain and your anger so that I can take it back to Washington and communicate it to my colleagues. But I also saw your resolve. You know, I left my house this morning in Virginia. It was early in the morning. It was dark. My 5-year-old son was asleep, went into his bedroom. I kissed him on the forehead, and I said, "Daddy will be home tonight." And I will. But your father didn't make it home. Juan Sebastian Guerrero didn't make it home. Renee Good didn't make it home. Now, Ronaldo and Lorenzo, when you're a dad, you're always kind of wondering, are you doing a good job? Your dad probably asked himself that. But as I listen to you and see you, it's very clear he did a hell of a job. And I know that he is very, very proud of you. Recently, members of the Homeland Security Committee had a closed-door briefing from ICE on their use of force policies. Republicans not willing to have an open hearing with ICE under oath to discuss those policies. But one of the things we learned, astoundingly, to me at least, was that from January of 2025 to today, 18 months, only one single solitary ICE officer has been disciplined for violating their use of force policies. One officer. 22,000 ICE officers now, thousands of violent encounters, 6 deaths, one officer has been disciplined. That tells me this is an agency where accountability has broken down and an agency that is broken. And I want to ask Councilman Martinez, a year ago today, I was a local government elected official like yourself. You, with your colleagues, have an oversight responsibility of the Houston Police Department. Does that sound remotely plausible to you? That there can be 22,000 officers involved in thousands of encounters, many violent, that only once an ICE officer could have violated the agency's use of force policies in 18 months?
Congressman, no. The Houston Police Department is a professional, trained organization, and something like that would not happen locally.
And if the chief of police of the Houston Police Department came before your council and said that, what would you say to him?
We would definitely be putting limitations on what he can do.
DAT, you, I presume, have been involved in investigations of officer-involved shootings and use of force violations. What do you think about that? 22,000 officers, one disciplined by the agency in 18 months.
As Councilmember Martinez said, the HPD is a good example. There are almost 6,000 sworn officers there in an 18-month period through an academy that is so rigorous, through a training program that is rigorous. We see more than that come across criminally in the DA's office because the agency holds those officers accountable and they strive for accountability. It stretches everything beyond comprehension to suggest that just once there's been an issue.
Thank you both. Lorenzo, Ronaldo, thank you for your courage, for your voice in this important moment. You are doing an incredible service to your nation, and I thank you for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressmember. This ends the question period of this hearing. We want to thank the witnesses that came forward today. We want to thank the community for coming out and your steadfast support for this family. And with that, we will hear closing remarks from Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too want to thank all the witnesses today, and of course, thank them for their honesty, their courage, and your willingness to share your story, especially Mr. Salgado's sons. Share them with Congress and with the American people. I also want to thank every member of the community who is here and for supporting this family as we go through this process. I want to thank also Judge Lena Hidalgo and the entire county team headed by our former colleague, Erica Lee Carter, who is now the county administrator. Thank you for hosting us today and handling all the logistics. I want to thank Mayor Whitmire, who's still with us here today, and has been through a greater part of this hearing, because it's really going to take all of us working together. Today is just one hearing, but it's not the last hearing. Today was about making sure this community knows that no one will ever forget Mr. Salgado, and that we're not going to forget all the other deaths under the custody or in the control of ICE. Throughout today's testimony, we heard difficult stories, but we've also heard about fear in the community. We heard about uncertainty. We heard about families whose lives has been changed forever. I wish we had also heard from ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, they chose not to come testify, and they've also chose not to answer any of our questions in writing, and we've introduced those letters into the record. But their absence does not erase the questions that have been asked today. It does not erase what happened on July 7th, and it certainly does not erase Congress's responsibility to pursue the truth. The people of Houston deserve answers. They deserve transparency. They deserve accountability. To the Salgado family, I want to say again, thank you. I know that no hearing can lessen your pain. No hearing can bring Lorenzo back. But your willingness to share your story has ensured that his life will not be reduced to a statistic or forgotten in a government report. This is the beginning. We will continue demanding documents, seeking testimony, and asking the questions of all the federal agencies involved, especially those who have refused to answer. And we will continue standing with this community because accountability has no option. Transparency is not optional. The Constitution is not optional. We owe the Salgado family the truth. We owe the community accountability. And we owe future generations the government worthy of the public's trust. I now want to also thank Ranking Member Thompson and Chairman Espaillat and all my colleagues who came from across the country and everyone who participated today. Again, this hearing is not the ending, but our work is also continuing. We will seek justice for Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. We will continue fighting for accountability, and we will continue standing with the people of Houston and this family until justice is done. Thank you, and the hearing is adjourned.
they should do with that.
They can't hold one. They don't. You don't want them to have a stand.
They should have a stand for it. This
We have a stand.
You have a
If
stand.
we could, okay, awesome. That's why they're all going back. We probably need to have somebody in the middle. Like,
we got the shot.
there it is. There? Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Like that, something like that. Okay. Do we want to pick these up as well? No. Y'all still getting it back there? Audio back there?
telling me you were thinking about me?
De los regulares. Like to see you again. Muy bien.
Thank y'all for being here this morning. I'm Sylvia Garcia, here from Houston, where the tragic killing of Mr. Salgado occurred. We've had a great hearing. I think most of you gathered from all of their colleagues from across the country that this incident is not just a heartbreaker for Houston, but actually it is a heartbreaker for our entire country. I want to thank again Ranking Member Thompson and the head of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for having the shadow hearing here today. And of course, to thank the Salgado boys for being here to speak with courage and commitment and passion about their father. And now all of us are gathered here today to assure the public, to assure Houston that we will find justice for Mr. Salgado. In the interest of time, we're going to limit our members to 1 minute and then take questions because I want to make sure that everybody is heard. We will begin with our Houston members with our most senior member, Representative Al Green.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Garcia. I'll be brief. Yes, there must be justice, and there has to be justice in spite of the cover-up that's taking place, in spite of the ethnic cleansing that's taking place in our country. There must be justice, and that justice has to include the President of the United States of America, who is at the head of this crime that's taking place. And when that justice is served, a part of it will be impeachment. I will bring articles of impeachment against the President of the United States of America for the injustice that he is perpetrating upon people in this country.
Next, Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, also from Houston.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garcia, and thank you again to our colleagues from across the country who've come to Houston to witness what we have seen, which is an incredible community facing an unimaginable and unconscionable, unconstitutional tragedy here in Houston. And I think one of the things that we saw in the hearing that's important to make clear is that the draconian immigration policies that we have seen instituted in the last year and a half are not making our communities safer. They are putting our communities in danger. They are completely inconsistent with accepted law enforcement practices, and this has to come to an end. And so I'm so grateful for everyone who's here today. I'm grateful to you, Congressman Garcia, for your leadership, and we are all here to ensure that justice is done.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Representative Christian Bennie, also from Houston.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garcia. ICE is the most well-funded law enforcement agency in this country. But what we found out at this hearing today, and what we've known for a couple of weeks, is that they are failing to do the basic requirements of law enforcement. The officers who killed Mr. Salgado Araujo did not have body-worn cameras. They shot into a moving vehicle despite there being no evidence that they absolutely had to do so to protect their lives. And we've seen across the country, they are masked instead of showing their identity to the people in our communities. Congress needs to fully investigate ICE. We've seen the president pinch pennies on SNAP benefits. He's pinched pennies on veterans benefits. If we're going to be spending all this money on ICE, we need to be in a position to hold them accountable. And when Democrats take the House back in January, I fully expect that the investigations will begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Adriano Espaillat of New York.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garcia. A crime has been committed, and there is a cover-up. ICE is not here. DHS is not here. The FBI is not here, all of which were duly invited. And what we heard from the district attorney of Harris County is that there is no cooperation whatsoever with these federal agencies and his investigation. So we will hold these agencies accountable. We will continue our oversight duties, and the money given to ICE, $113 billion, must be rescinded, must be clawed back. This is a horrendous injustice.
Thank you. Next is Representative Barragan of California.
Thank you, Sylvia, for hosting. I used to serve as chair of the border sub on Homeland. So I have seen how ICE has gone over the last 10 years, just move to a time that we're in now, totally out of control, totally rogue. It's an agency that doesn't have the same standards as your local police department hiring standards and use of force standards. Your local police has to show their name. They don't have masks on. They wear body cameras. What was most disturbing of what we heard today was what the DA said over and over again. They are not getting the full cooperation to get everything that they need to investigate this, because we need to make clear that nobody is above the law, not ICE officers, nobody. Everything needs to be investigated, and we need to bring justice to this family. And this is not the only family. There's families in Maine, the family of Renee Good, the family of Alex Preddy, and the list goes on and on. And so we need to continue to highlight these stories because this president, this administration, and this agency is not going after serious criminal offenders like they promised. They're going after our brothers, our sisters. We heard today a good man who was just going to work, who's been in Houston for decades. So we will continue to fight for justice. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Representative Castro of San Antonio, Texas.
Under Donald Trump, ICE has become an abusive and rogue organization that I believe should be disbanded. There has been brutality on the streets. We have seen American citizens killed, as well as good, hardworking people like Lorenzo. We've also seen a brutality inside the prison walls of places like Dilley and Carnes and Pearsall and detention centers across the country where others have died as well. We're living in a very ugly time because of Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign. The question is, what will we do about it? Will there be justice for Lorenzo and others? And will there be accountability for those who have violated and broken the law? The answer must be yes in our country. And I look forward to working with all of my colleagues to pursue it.
I think in this room, it's probably a unanimous yes, Congressman. Next up is Andrea Salinas. Representative Salinas is from Oregon.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you to my colleagues for bringing us here today. I am Andrea Salinas from the great state of Oregon's Willamette Valley, and I'm here today for the Salgado family. I'm here to say sorry that their government could not protect their father. Not only could they not protect him, they killed him. This is happening too often, and we learned today that only one ICE agent has been investigated, yet we know of 8 killings. This is not justice. That is why we're here today. In the short term, it means events just like this, to raise awareness, to let community members know that we have your back, that it is okay to go to mass. It is okay to go to the grocery store. It is okay to go to school, to be a family, out in public, to go to the parks. We have your back. In the medium term, it means making sure that we pass legislation that actually helps to protect the civil rights of Latinos across the country and of our communities. And in the long term, it means these investigations that have to take place. They have to take place when Democrats are in control, when we hold this administration accountable, when we hold CBP accountable, when we hold ICE accountable. We have passed so many measures to pull back the funding from ICE. And let's be honest, our Republican colleagues keep funneling them more and more money. And as was said earlier, they are the largest law enforcement agency and the most funded law enforcement agency in this country. This has to stop.
Yes, it must stop. And joining us in that effort is Congressman James Walkinshaw from Virginia.
Thank you. I came from Virginia today to show my support for Congresswoman Garcia, for the people of Houston, and for the Salgado family. And the American people will never see exactly what happened to Lorenzo Salgado Araujo because there's no body camera footage. But every single American has the opportunity to see in the eyes of his sons the pain and devastation of this reckless, out of control mass deportation agenda. And that pain and devastation exists in the eyes of families in every corner of the nation, including my home in Virginia. And that's why we're here today saying enough is enough. It is past time to end this violence, and we're going to take that message back with us to Washington.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Menendez of New Jersey.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for organizing this forum. Thank you to all of the Texas delegation that were here today. Thank you to Chairman Espaillat and all of our colleagues. I'm Rob Menendez. I come from New Jersey's 8th Congressional District. I've been to field hearings in Minneapolis after the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. I've been to field hearings in Newark to combat what's been happening there at Delaney Hall. My plea to the American people is don't wait for this to happen in your community. Speak out now. The best time would have been yesterday, but speak out now, because this is not who we are as a country. And this will arrive at our doorstep, whether we acknowledge that or not. It will impact us directly or impact those that we care about. I had a look into the eyes of 2 young men who lost their father. That should not be happening in our country at the hands of the federal government. And we can stop it. Us here, the elected representatives, will be at the tip of the spear in pushing back against this administration. But the more people that join the chorus of Americans who are saying this is wrong and unacceptable, the stronger we become in pushing back against this and ending this national nightmare and turning the page on the darkness that we have seen. And we're going to keep showing up until we turn that page. We're going to keep showing up and engaging with the American people across the country to get us to those better tomorrows, to end this national nightmare. I'm so thankful for my colleagues that I get to do this work with.
Thank you. And of course, all of us must join in this effort. And with us today, we also have some of our strong allies that have been with us from the very beginning. I'd like to start with Rochelle Garza, Commission Chair of the United States Commission on Civil Rights.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo should still be alive today. His family should be welcoming him home after work, not mourning his death. They should be talking about weekend plans, not protesting for accountability. My name is Rochelle Garza, and I proudly serve as the chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Over the past few months, I've heard directly from communities in St. Paul, Minnesota, Chicago, and most recently Los Angeles through the People's Hearings on Immigration Enforcement. It's an effort organized by the Hispanic Federation, the Texas Civil Rights Project, the Miranda Family Fund, and Latino Victory Foundation. And the testimony we've heard is a powerful reminder of why institutions like the Commission on Civil Rights exist. Since its creation in 1957, the Commission was designed to go directly to the communities to document and report on the status of civil rights to the President and Congress. Today, it remains the only independent, bipartisan, fact-finding federal agency with this responsibility. And so I want to thank the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, especially Chair Espaillat and Congresswoman Garcia, for inviting me to listen, to learn, and share what I heard today with my colleagues on the Commission as we deliberate our next investigation. And what I heard today mirrors what I've heard from over 100 individuals impacted by immigration enforcement efforts. I've listened to parents, workers, faith leaders, educators, attorneys, and directly impacted individuals describe how immigration enforcement has changed their lives, how it's harmed their families, and how it's disrupted their neighborhoods. I heard how a father, a U.S. citizen who had filmed ICE activity, exercising his First Amendment rights in St. Paul, found his children fearful of the unmarked ICE vehicle that had parked outside their home. I heard how a mother who had recently given birth was taken from her newborn when she was nursing and denied support to maintain her milk or feed her baby. I heard how a U.S. citizen, a small business owner, was beaten and taken by ICE officers despite his pleas that he was a citizen. And I heard how over 300 car wash employees were disappeared in Los Angeles, separating families, traumatizing those who were lucky enough to be released. The reality of what I heard is the same no matter what city I've been in, from St. Paul to Chicago to Los Angeles to Houston. People are being racially profiled and disappeared. The right to protest is under attack, and people are being killed. As a resident of the Rio Grande Valley, immigration enforcement, for better or worse, has been a part of my life. But what we've seen happen across this country threatens the civil rights of all Americans. As of May of 2026, 400,000 people have been taken by ICE. That's left 145,000 U.S. citizen children without one of their parents. And that includes 22,000 children without either of their parents. That's family separation. And as of July 2026, there are 65,000 people detained in ICE facilities. There have been over 50 deaths, 10 suicides, and at least one of those deaths has been ruled a homicide by a coroner. And all of this has been driven by unprecedented amounts of investment in ICE, the Supreme Court's sanction of racial profiling in Vasquez Perdomo, as well as surveillance, the expansion of the surveillance system. The people being impacted are our neighbors, our friends, our fellow community members, our families. And as a mother to two girls, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, I am absolutely horrified by what is happening, and my heart breaks for Lorenzo's family. The Commission on Civil Rights exists because civil rights violations cannot be ignored simply because they are difficult or politically controversial. With each tragedy, the calls for an independent investigation into immigration enforcement have grown louder and increasingly bipartisan. These calls have now gone beyond our borders, with the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights requesting an investigation into all deaths in ICE custody. The people's hearings on immigration enforcement demonstrated the urgent need for that scrutiny, and it is my hope that our commission agrees to investigate and make clear that civil rights protections do not end where immigration enforcement begins. For Lorenzo's family and for all families whose worlds have been shattered by federal immigration enforcement, there are people that you will never meet that are grieving with you, and they are demanding justice, and we will get it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we all look forward to working with you to ensure that the commission does act and do that investigation, because it is sorely, sorely needed. Next up, we have Rafael Colasso, Senior Director of Political Campaigns and Executive Director, Unidos U.S. Action Fund, and Eric Olguin, Unidos U.S. Texas State Director.
Thank you, Congresswoman. On behalf of Unidos U.S., I just want to reiterate our serious and deepest condolences to the Salgado family, as we've been all reflecting over these last few weeks. You know, Don Lorenzo was the kind of father, the kind of husband, and neighbor and friend that we all deserve in our lives. And we have to do everything we can, and Unidos U.S. will stand with the family and all of our allied partners here and members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus to do all we can to bring justice for the enclosure for this wonderful family. It's clear that ICE is broken, and we need to do all we can to, first of all, bring justice and transparency into this investigation. It was incredulous to sit in this room today and hear the Houston District Attorney lay out very plainly that there's a pretty obvious cover-up happening in this investigation on the federal level. And so we need to not only bring justice to this and transparency to this investigation, but we have to support the members of the CHC, our allied partners in Congress, our allied partners around the country, to truly rein in this unjust organization in our federal immigration system, so that they go by the same training standards and best practices of law enforcement that every other law enforcement agency across the country abides by. Again, Unidos U.S. Is proud to stand with our allied partners, with this wonderful family, with the members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, to call for transparency, accountability, justice, and an immigration enforcement system that abides by the rule of law and truly reflects the values of our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And next we have Frankie Miranda, President and CEO of the Hispanic Federation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of the more than 850 organizations that we represent at the Hispanic Federation, direct service providers in communities who are under attack by this administration, trying to cut the services, essential services to our communities, I want to express my outrage. This is an agency, ICE is an agency that, under the excuse of ineptitude, not having enough resources, not being able to get cameras, not being able to follow the rules, are perfecting a machine of terror. We saw it in the people's hearings in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and in many other cities. I want to elevate what Congressman Menendez said. We cannot wait for this to happen in your neighborhood. And that is why national organizations are teaming up with local organizations to make sure that people have the information that they need, that people can be trained as constitutional observers, but at the same time that we can express our outrage. We are all outraged. And that is why We need to continue cooperating. Thank you to these 11 members. I wish we have many, many more here, but you are American heroes. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and we're committing all our resources to continue preserving testimony of the many, many other abuses that have happened in this country, and unfortunately, we still don't know about them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We may be 11, but we're just as angry, outraged, and we're strong and loud. I want to remind you that one of the letters that I introduced for the record was signed by 180 members, all demanding an independent, transparent, top-to-bottom investigation, all demanding answers, and all demanding justice for Mr. Salgado. Next up, we have Catherine Pichardo, President and CEO of the Latino Victory Project.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Catherine Pichardo, soy presidenta de Latina Victory y estamos aquí para exigir transparencia, exigir responsabilidad, exigir justicia. Estamos en un momento muy difícil en nuestro país para la comunidad latina y para todos los americanos. Un momento que no podemos desperdiciar, un momento que tenemos que crear comunidades más fuertes, comunidades más resilientes, trabajar unidos, porque tenemos un gobierno y agencias como ICE que están fuera de control. Y necesitamos un Congreso que pueda hacer un contrapeso a lo que está haciendo este presidente y estas agencias. Por eso quiero agradecer a los miembros que están aquí hoy y necesitamos más. Quiero exhortar a toda nuestra comunidad a que este año hay unas elecciones muy, muy importantes para el Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Salgamos a votar. Vamos a hacer nuestras voces sonar y resonar. Que se repique por todo el mundo. Que la comunidad latina no se deja. Muchísimas gracias.
Next we have Diana Isa, Texas State Director, Mi Familia Vota.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm no politician, but I am here on behalf of the community, a community that has really shown up for the Salgado family, but a community that is also outraged by all of the attacks that our communities have seen under this administration. On behalf of Mi Familia Vota, our hearts are with the Salgado family as they grieve this unimaginable loss. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo represented the very best of our community. We stand with his loved ones as they seek truth, justice, and accountability. Lorenzo's death also focuses us to confront a much larger issue. Immigration detention is not intended to be punitive, and a person's immigration status should never determine whether their life is valued. Yet too many people are dying in ICE detention, at least 21 already this year, and too many others have lost their lives during immigration enforcement operations. As we have heard today, ICE and DHS's initial account of what happened to Lorenzo does not align with the reality described by those that were here today. We know now that the 3 eyewitnesses who were in the vehicle have stated that Lorenzo stopped the car, put it in park, and fire was still put upon. This is not an isolated incident. Too often, initial accounts from ICE and DHS are later contradicted by video evidence, witness testimony, or findings in court. Time and time again, we have seen cases where the facts ultimately tell a very different story than the one presented to the public. Lorenzo's family, the people of Houston, and the American people deserve a full and transparent investigation, as we have heard over and over again. We demand that the eyewitnesses currently in ICE custody be allowed to remain in the country so that they can testify about what they saw, and that ICE fully comply with any court orders preventing their removal. We also deserve to know how the initial public narrative was created and approved. Public trust depends on transparency, and the trust has been seriously damaged. Aggressive enforcement tactics that undermine constitutional rights and due process make every community less safe. Immigration enforcement must respect the Constitution, the rule of law, and the dignity of every human life. Today, Latino communities across this country are living with fear, as we have also heard over and over again. Many people they are being targeted not because of criminal conduct, but because of the color of their skin, the language that they speak, where they shop, or the neighborhoods that they call home. The fear cannot become the defining feature of American society, and it must never become the defining feature of our immigration system. Latino families deserve the same safety, dignity, and equal protection as every other Houstonian. Our community will not be silenced, even if the Trump White House continues to use inflammatory anti-immigrant rhetoric, and we will continue to speak out, organize, and demand accountability. I urge all of us that are eligible to vote these elections. Too much is at stake. And thank you, everybody here, allied and members of Congress, for the support.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our opening remarks. If there's any questions from the press, either directed to me or to any of the members or allies present. In the pink.
Thank you. Congresswoman Garcia, you mentioned that you really wanted to get transparency in terms of what's happening with this investigation. Was there anything in particular you wanted to learn today, and any questions that you still have in terms of how things are proceeding at the federal and local level?
Well, as I directed a question to the DA, I mean, I would like to know who the shooter is and get some assurance that he's not on the streets anywhere in America, and might take the same, in what I consider, unlawful, excessive, abusive force that he took. Because I think at any time that I've been around in law enforcement, whenever there's a shooting, they immediately put that person on administrative leave. They make sure that that person is no longer in the streets. We haven't gotten that assurance. So that is one of the questions that I still have. Next, sir.
Somebody mentioned Woody Park and what happened here. And the end result was that law enforcement here in Houston, across the country, had longer times to train. How long are ICE agents being trained? Because I've heard that it was not long at all before they put them in the field.
Well, I'm hearing everything from 2 weeks to months, but I'll defer to who had that briefing, Mr. Whiteshot. Can you know that answer?
Yeah, I can.
More specific.
Currently, ICE says it's 40 days, and here's what we know, though: they have removed from the training for ICE officers critical elements that existed before around use of force, around their use of firearms. And what ICE will say is, well, we're teaching the same curriculum, but in a shorter period of time. And I mentioned my son earlier, he's starting kindergarten pretty soon. And if the principal of the school told me, we're going to teach him the exact same material, but do it in half the time, I wouldn't buy it. And I don't buy it with respect to ICE either. They're cutting corners.
Way in the back. Yes, ma'am. Well, I think one of the things you'll see is what we've already done. I mean, we put out a 10-point plan for reforms in ICE. We also all have committed to not providing one more penny of funding for ICE. Those are all real concrete things that we're already doing. And I think all of us here gathered today represent, probably 7 or 8 different committees. And I can tell you that all the committees of jurisdiction are already looking at what they can do. So yes, this will result in more. And as I stated earlier, this is just one hearing. There will be more requests for documents. There will be more. We will keep the heat on. We're not going to just let this go away or try to have anybody pull it under the rug or cover it up. We will continue the fight. Any other member would like to add to that from any of the committees of jurisdiction? Well, we'll go on to the next one. Yes, sir. Well, I'm very hopeful that November will change things, and we will be able to get some answers. I was, in the interest of full disclosure, I did have a conversation with the acting director of ICE, and that is when he committed that there would be body cameras on all agents in the field by the end of this month. Later, I had a conversation with the Secretary of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. He indicated that was too soon, they needed enough time, so now he's saying 45 to 90 days. So even if we manage to make sure that they do it, that will be, frankly, a big win because right now we have nothing. So I want to make sure that the public understands that it may be small steps, but we will get there because we're not going to get stopped until we get justice for Mr. Salgado and some changes in ICE, period, full stop.
Let me add something.
Sure.
Thank you. The Honorable Bennie Thompson was here today. He is currently the ranking member of Homeland Security, the committee in Congress. And as such, he has sent a letter to the head of ICE as well as DHS, I suppose. And in that letter, there were many questions that were asked, but he's laying the foundation for a future hearing. All of the Democratic members on the committee signed the letter. The Democrats are committed to an investigation, transparency, and accountability.
Anyone else? Sure.
What has changed is that this is a watershed moment for the Latino community. We've had over 175,000 people sign petitions. Financial support has come into the family as well. We have over 300 vigils that are actually planned for Saturday, all around the country itself. And so post-Preddy and Ray Nicole Good, folks kind of lost attention to what was happening, but the detentions, the deportations effectively continued. The Latino community is standing up for ourselves. That is what you're seeing here. We're standing up across the country. Over 20,000 people in Houston alone signed that petition, which I delivered to the mayor this morning. Over 57,000 people in Texas alone signed that petition, in 831 cities of 971 in this state. People are paying attention. Latinos are standing up. Our coalition is stronger than it has ever been, and with the support of Sylvia Garcia, Adriano, and the CHC, and all of these members here, you're going to start to see a significant shift coming because Latinos are tuned in, and we will hold them accountable in November.
Let me just say that much needs to be done. In fact, the body camera program is not codified. It's not contemplated in law, although money, $20 million, were appropriated for it. So that program was piloted by the previous administration, obviously stopped by this new administration, and now is done haphazardly across the country, but it's not law. It should be, all of the things that we are proposing should be contemplated and should be done through legislation. Dream and Promise Act, body cameras, farm workers bill. All of these immigration-related pieces that are also in a comprehensive bill should also be looked at individually and be codified. We cannot rely on departmental regulation for, let's say, body cameras. It should be mandated by law, and I think that's what we plan to do.
Thank you. We've got members with flights, so I'll take just one more question with the red cap.
What is the message to the large and growing chorus of people in this country and around the world who see ICE as a department that has been baked in hatred and terror and unconstitutionality? Individuals who would like to see the agency go away entirely, given its approach towards people on our streets. What is the message to those folks? I hear a lot about reform.
Well, it starts with reforms, it starts with changes, but I think you probably heard there's been a number of words used during the testimony today, disbanding, retooling, rebuilding. The bottom line is it's got to change. What it's doing now is unacceptable, it's un-American, it's unconstitutional, it's humane, and it's unchristian. And we will work hard to make sure we get that done. Now, what will result, hopefully, will be a just, humane immigration system. People have to remember that immigration, violation of immigration law by in itself is not a crime. It's not a crime. It's administrative law. It's no different than someone who isn't paying their IRS. They're not committing a crime until they're convicted, but they're in violation of an IRS rule. So to me, it's about making sure that we make the changes necessary, and we are all committed to doing that. Very quickly, because we need to adjourn. Excuse me.
If the Secretary of what is now War can change the Department of Defense to the Department of War, then I cannot see why we can't change ICE and reform ICE. It can become ICE today and nice tomorrow.
Well, with that note, we will adjourn, but of course, some of our members may be available for any one-on-ones or any follow-up that you might have at their pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Congressman.